And we're back with senior advisor to Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, Mark Regev. He's also the former Israeli ambassador to the United Kingdom. Thanks for joining us, Ambassador Regev. The New York Times is reporting that 3 senior Israeli officials say that the plan is to wipe out Hamas's top leadership in Gaza and to invade Gaza City. We haven't really heard what the plan is. We've seen a lot of airstrikes on Gaza. Can you confirm that that is the plan, to wipe out Hamas's top leadership and to invade Gaza City with a ground force?
Jake, you of course know that I'm not going to go into operational details of military activities that are still ahead of us. I can only share the goal with you of the operation, which has been stated, and I'll state it again. We will dismantle Hamas's military machine and take apart its political governance in Gaza. We will destroy both the military wing of Hamas, its military machine, its terrorist capabilities, and its governmental activities, its governmental structure in Gaza.
How many people is that, do you think?
I can't go into numbers, but it means that when this is over, Hamas will be incapable of launching the sort of horrendous attack that they did on October 7th. They will be physically incapable of launching such an operation.
So, certainly taking out Hamas's leadership, I understand the point of that, but the Palestinian Health Ministry in Gaza says 2,800 Palestinians have been killed, and somewhere between a quarter and a third of them are children. That's not Hamas's leadership.
Can I please offer a word of caution? Now, I know that there is real suffering in Gaza. There's a war going on, and innocent people are getting caught up in a very difficult situation. I don't minimize that. But you have to take with a grain of salt any information that comes out of the Hamas-controlled Ministry of Health in Gaza. That has to be said. Gaza is not a democracy. There's not an independent health bureaucracy that is trying to do its best. Every doctor you speak to, every hospital director you speak to, works under the gun of Hamas. They are not independent. If they speak out of turn, they will pay a price. It's like speaking to a doctor in North Korea or a doctor in the former Soviet Union. They don't have independent opinions. They have to follow the party line, and if not, they face violent consequences. So those numbers, they might be true, they might not be true. Hamas, of course, has an interest in exaggerating civilian casualties.
So let's assume that you...
And of course, Hamas doesn't say how many of them were combatants, of course, correct?
Right. So let's assume that you take out the Hamas leadership and their ability to commit atrocities. Ambassador Herzog told me yesterday that Israel does not want to reoccupy Gaza after the mission is done. So what happens after Hamas is destroyed? Who would be in charge of Gaza?
So first of all, maybe almost anything would be better than Hamas. I mean, if there were illusions that Hamas had somehow moderated its position, that the responsibility of government of being ruling over 2.3 million people forces Hamas to be a more rational behavior, that was proven wrong. The violence, the brutal, horrific violence that we saw on October 7th showed that to be wrong. This is a hardcore, unreformed, extremist, murderous terrorist organization. And so you have to say, if it's like ISIS, how could it get much worse? So we have to hit it hard. Yeah. We have to destroy its ability to attack us. And I've been in discussions where different contingencies have been discussed, what happens after. At this stage, I'm not at liberty to discuss those discussions, but I can assure you that Israel is thinking 3 steps ahead. The most important thing now is that we focus on the total destruction of the Hamas military machine and the dismantling of its political structures.
There's a new report in Haaretz that alleges senior officials in Prime Minister Netanyahu's office are barred from working with an Israeli Defense Ministry task force, which is focused on repairing infrastructure near Gaza, because the Defense Task Force is led by a staunch opponent of the Netanyahu judicial overhaul. Is that true?
I have not read that report, and I'm not familiar with any of that. I apologize.
You've said that Israel is united right now, very united. So far, Netanyahu has not been able to get opposition leader Yair Lapid to join the unity government. What's going on there? Shouldn't Israel be as united as possible?
Well, we've already united by bringing in one major opposition party, and as you know, they joined a few days ago, and we've now got a national emergency government where Mr. Gantz, who was a very severe critic of Prime Minister Netanyahu, stepped in and said, in this time of crisis, we have to unite to fight the common enemy. And I think if you look at the polling in Israel, that there's a wide support for that sort of move. It must be remembered, Jake, when they crossed the border on October 7th to murder us, they went to left-wing kibbutzim where people in their lives never voted for Netanyahu, and they went to right-wing villages where everyone likes Netanyahu. They didn't care if Israelis are left-wing or right-wing, religious, secular, what their political views are. They kill us because we're Israelis. They kill us because we are Jews. The murderous violence that we saw on October 7th, that was the largest single act of anti-Semitic violence since 1945, since the terrible years of the Holocaust. We've never seen anything of that scale for, what is it? It's more than half a century. And so I think for many Israelis, I mean, we will argue about politics just as you in America argue about politics, and we will do it very loudly and we'll do it very passionately. But ultimately, I think these attacks by Hamas, to a certain extent, were a slap on the face. We have to understand that we Israelis have a common destiny. We have a common situation that we are all together in facing these terrible and horrific challenges.
Yeah. Mark Regev, thank you so much for your time today. Appreciate it.
My pleasure.